Welcome to Visibility by Design podcast with your host, Juliette Stapleton. In this show, I want to help you combine your marketing strategies and your human design potential so you can show up, stand out, and attract your perfect clients with confidence and ease. Are you ready? Enjoy the show. Hi guys, welcome back to Visibility by Design with your host Juliette Stapleton. Today I have a wonderful guest for you. Let me introduce you to Epiphany James. Epiphany, first of all, I love your name. I mean, your parents, thank you for giving you this name. It's such a beautiful name. I couldn't believe my eyes, and I don't know anybody else with this name. But when I saw you first, I think that I joined your group, found you in another group somewhere, and you were promoting your group. You were initiating and promoting your group because Epiphany Guy is the manifestor. And so I joined your group. I responded to that. And I thought, my God, this name is just so beautiful. Because,
thank you so much.
And how many times I had an epiphany listening to Epiphany James. And I hope, guys, that you're going to have a few of your own today. So let me just, in a couple of words, who is Epiphany? She's a business mystic. I love this. I just love this. Quantum design practitioner. She's an emotional manifestor, 3-5. And she is a person with an amazing voice. And by the end of this episode, you're going to be as hooked up on listening to Epiphany as me. You're going to join her group and you're going to stalk her and follow her for the rest of your life, I think, because there's just so much magic. Epiphany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Juliette. I really appreciate that. I'm just beaming over here from your words of exhortation. I love it. So thank you. And thank you to your amazing and lovely audience for tuning in today. I'm just glad to not just connect with you, but to connect with their energy as well. And it's been such an interesting journey coming into my business mysticism. But what I know is that time is not as linear as we would fashion ourselves to believe. And so I believe that whoever's listening to this is listening to it exactly when they need to, and that this will land with them exactly how it's supposed to. And so, yes, thank you.
And what you just said, I had such a splenic response to it. It's so true. I absolutely love it. I forgot to mention that you are a film producer, which
yes.
adds an extra layer of wow.
Yes, casually. Yes, that is my training is in film producing, and I adore film producing. So again, I didn't plan on becoming a mysticism. The business mystic life chose me, I would say. And so it's been beautiful. What I love is I am a 3-5, and we can tumble through that, what do you call it? That rabbit hole. But it is a life of exploration. It is a life of adventure, and it's a life of learning through doing. And to release the words trial and failure, it's trial and feedback. Everything is feedback. There is no failure, especially for anyone with a 3 in their profile. And that's the first thing that I will release from someone when I see that number in their profile is, if you have ever felt any sort of limitation or guilt about not being the like one career and done type person, or, you know, if you would just choose one thing, then you would be successful. I think we are here to actually dismantle that we are here by being embodied us, by being explorers, and by not being afraid to some people would call it fail forward. I just really dislike that name, but not being afraid to just actually get our feet wet, that we come to a place of wisdom, of embodied wisdom, because we've actually lived those things. And so when you with the 3 line, Juliette, share with someone, this is what works, this doesn't work, you're doing that from a very deep place of resonance of like, I've actually lived that vibration, and I'm telling you what resonated and what doesn't. And what a beautiful gift that is, to have that kind of wisdom to share with the world.
I love that. I just recently was reading about 1-3 profile, my profile, and it said you're an expert, but you're more an expert of what doesn't work. And I thought, yes, because I try everything and I fail miserably, but I love it because unless I experience it, I don't know. Somebody asked me, Juliette, would you like to go, and do this, say, I don't know, sky jumping? And even though I might have my own like initial response to it and saying, no, that's just not me. But to be honest with you, unless I try it, I don't know, because I had that response no to motorcycles. Then my husband persuaded me to take a ride with him. And from the first minute, I knew I was a biker chick. And I did a lot of biking with him, hardcore biking with him. And so experiencing that's, in a way, I think that this is what line 3 does to you. You don't know, you can't know with your mind. You can't know with, even sometimes you get this response and it's still not right unless you experience it, and then you can be a judge whether you like it, you don't like it, it's good for you or not good for you. It presents challenges, I think, in life, because sometimes you just don't want to try things. You're kind of comfortable in your little comfort zone. You don't want to try new things. What if you don't like it? Then it's going to be a waste of time, but it never really is. Then it just gives you that clarity of, okay, this is definitely not for me. And so there is no guilt.
Right, exactly. We have to release the guilt. And I totally feel you that there are seasons where like, I would really love to maybe not be an explorer right now. I would love to just be okay with the same sort of same old. But again, I just the more that I lean into the reality that that is where the magic lies, and to actually be curious. That's why I actually really lean into the symbolism of Alice in Wonderland. She was curious. She chose to go down into that wonderland, into that rabbit hole. And I think that she would have not had any of those wonderful experiences without it. And so did she get tested and learn? Yes, but this is the hero's journey. And I think that is why I was drawn to storytelling and to filmmaking, is the hero's journey is all about that, is through coming to wisdom, through exploration, through living, through being open to the lessons that we're learning, to both internally within ourselves, intrapersonally, but also interpersonally. Those around us are our guides and are those who are put into our path to teach us lessons, whether we enjoy the lesson learning process or not.
This is so interesting because I can relate to that. And I think this is this presence of line 3 in my design, in my profile, because I grew up, my very first book that wasn't, like ABC book, was a huge collection of Russian fairy tales and legends.
Oh,
I was about 5, and people couldn't believe that this 5-year-old is sitting there reading this huge book. And I think that 1-3 just showed in that. It was a book about fairy tales, about trials and tribulations, about all the, the hero journey. And then my researcher mind with line 1 going for that big book and not going for the easy kind of kiddie stuff. So yeah, it's just, and it's, again, I'm getting so much, there's just so much connection. It's very interesting. See, guys, the reason why I decided to start, for example, this podcast series is for these kind of conversations. These are the practical little things, how in your design, how you are. And it's not like you are like this in business, you are not like this in your life, right? This is the way you are. You can make connections. Why are you like this? Why is storytelling, for example, easy for you? Maybe you don't think it is easy, but everybody says you're brilliant at storytelling. Why? Because there's something in your design, in your past. There's all this evidence that you are, and I find then you get a chance to own it. If you have a problem with owning and honoring what you actually have. Mm-hmm. And you talk a lot about honoring yourself on different levels. Mm-hmm. Especially with the energy and self-love. As a manifestor, that's an important thing for you.
Very important. And the thing is self-love is key. Love. I had this workshop where I was saying, what's love got to do with it when it comes to sales? And it's everything. Love has everything to do with the sales process, because what I help specifically as a business mystic is to help you ignite and activate the magic within you, so that you become a magnet for opportunities, for your dream clients, for actually creating into your reality what you wish to create. Because the reality is, yes, I'm a manifester type, but everyone can manifest. I don't have the copyright on manifesting. So anyone can manifest. In fact, everyone is creating their reality right now, whether they're being intentional about it or not. And so it's about that intentionality. So yes, it is a big theme for me to be an initiator in quantum human design language. That would be my energetic type, as an initiator, as someone who is here to help people initiate them into a frequency of transformation. And so the more that I honor my design, I actually help you honor your design just by essence of being me. And something I think a lot of people forget, and if one of your listeners only heard this sentence and nothing else and didn't remember a thing else, I would be okay with them at least taking away with them that you are a human being. You're not a human doing. And I think we can get very caught up in the world of what am I here to do? And that will create meaning in my life. It's backwards. It's like in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and he's like, strike that, reverse it. It is about being, and by essence of being who you are truly here to be. When we talk in the spiritual space about your highest expression of self, when you are in that frequency, that is where transformation happens. It's from that place. It's not by doing, it's by essence of being, that you give permission to other people to be themselves as well. So it's a great unlearning that we're here to do, having gone through the school system, having gone through the systems of our societies. Not to say that systems are entirely bad, but they're efficient in homogenization. And so we have to be aware that as an adult, most of the work that we do of self-actualization, whether it's in our business or personal lives, because we're holistic beings, it's all the same living body going through those experiences, that the more that we, as an adult, the more that we actually look at who we were as children, that we can actually become who we were here to be, because that child was running around unabashed, no filter whatsoever. You see it in kids these days, and their currency is hope. Kids have so much hope and so much imagination because they live in a realm of infinite possibilities. And if anything, I try to guard that and be a guide, the patron saint of possibilities. I want us to live in a frequency of hope and help you raise your belief in that truly anything is possible. And the more that you believe that, the more that it's true, rather than falling into there's no blame. If you fall into a space of saying, I just don't know if it's possible anymore, or because, and we talk about gate activations, gate 44 is the gate of truth. It's also the gate of patterns. If you look at the past and you say, well, that was true for the past, so it must be true for the future. The moment that you do that, yes, there is wisdom in studying the past. I freaking love history, but I also love science, because science is an exploration of the future. We are always pushing the bounds of what's possible. Our human consciousness is expanding on a daily basis. Hang out on physics.org and your mind will be blown daily. So you have to have that balance of both. I don't blame you if you look at the past and say, well, this was true there, so it must be true here. But the truth is, what if we released that and said, yes, that was true for the past, but that doesn't have to be true for the future. And that circles right back around to, you get to choose your own narrative. You get to co-author your story. You get to pick up your pen. I don't know if I can say words that are 4-letter words, but you can pick
you
up
can
your
say
own.
any kind of letter words on my
Okay,
podcast.
like, we didn't have that conversation ahead of time, but I should have checked. But yes, truly, you pick up your own damn pen, because your life is going to unfold whether you're intentional about it or not. So why not? Why not pick up the pen and say, this gets to be true for me moving forward? No more is X, Y, and Z true for me from the past.
This is very, very powerful. And while I was listening to you, I was thinking, just actually earlier today, this talking about the divine timing of this podcast and this conversation specifically, I was thinking how when I was a kid, I was so driven. And no matter what, and I had somewhat dysfunctional family, very difficult relationships with my dad. There was a lot of trauma that I don't remember right now, because I was just too driven towards my dreams, what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And everything was focused on that. And I was like this up until my maybe mid 20s or so, or early 20s. And then we start adulting, and the adulthood is where you start doing versus being much more. You think that that's exactly what is expected of you. You bend backwards and you spread yourself too thin. And then when you start reversing this and you start thinking, okay, how can I just be? Who's going to pay me money if I just, I just am? And this is something that, so when we're talking about, what happened in the past is not true for you right now, you can release that. I think that it's a lot of it has to do with the process of some people earlier, some people later, but the adulting and the whole conditioning that's happening whenever you allow it as well, to pass through that hope that you were talking about that kids have. And this is an interesting topic then, where is the compass? Should we focus on who we are when we were kids? Should we focus on the possibility of who we can be, or leaning into talking about human design, which is still, obviously we are those people. But what is your stance? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, that's such a good question. And the answer is yes. So I am 33, but I am also 4, and I'm also 16, and I'm also 22. I never stopped being those versions of myself. And the reality is that I'm also 44, and I'm also 65. That may sound too ethereal for it to feel powerful, or for it to feel grounded, perhaps. But I am an air sign. I'm like all air signs. So let's just fly into the clouds for a moment, and then we can ground it with your oneness, and it'll be lovely. I really do believe that when we own the wisdom of all the iterations of ourselves that we've had, that is what brings us closer to our higher self. So the compass is, yes, the compass is you. And I can look at your design for different clues. Like, for instance, you're a 1-3, which is actually, it's a more rare profile type where you're fully intrapersonal with your themes and your lessons and your learnings. It's all within you. You're very self-sufficient in that way. Whereas most types have one that's intrapersonal and one that's interpersonal, so you're learning within yourself, but also in relationship with others. The others, the collective, learns from you, but from your inner process, right? So there's some clues there that we can look at. And of course, I like to look at your gate activations and say your Mercury gates, because that's what you're here to speak about. Your Earth gates is what the themes that need to ground you in order for you to express your Sun gates, which you're here to beam out into the world. And then you have your Moon gates, which help you know your big why, your driving force, and also sort of like your comfort blanket. There's these things that we can look at in your design, but at the end of the day, we can remove all of that and say, without even complicating it, that there's a reason that a lot of different historical texts talk about this still small voice. And that when you get quiet and you get more attuned to your own still small voice, then there's less fretting about even needing to look for external affirmations. And, you don't even have to obsess about your strategy and authority. Of course, I love strategy and authority, but that's not a dogma to hang your hat on. You are your own authority. You are sacred now. I had this visualization several months ago now where I pictured the book that I would write, and it was called You're Sacred Now. And at first I thought it was saying like, your sacred now is in this moment, like you're sacred now being the moment that is sacred. But then I realized, no, it's you, with the apostrophe, with the ownership of you are sacred right now. And the more that you actually spend time with you rather than looking for distractions from yourself, which is so easy to fall into more and more on a daily basis, so many distractions. But the more that you actually schedule in time to be with you, to be with your thoughts, and to actually become attuned to your still small voice, the rest sort of falls away. The rest sort of, the chips will fall as they may, so to speak, where when you're in that frequency, the aligned actions will feel so clear to you because you are attuned to you. Does that make sense? Rather than making a
Absolutely.
decision from what I call shoulds, coulds, and conditioning, making decisions from this space of, well, what should I do? What could other people think about me if I do this? What would you do if you had no fear whatsoever about what other people would think?
It's very
And to have
powerful.
that answer, it really takes listening to yourself.
It's so true. You mentioned something. It's so funny that you said you're going to bring it down with your oneness just before you started. I'm an earth sign. So I'm going to ask you a practical question from with taking everything that you just said.
Mhm.
The key was if you schedule that time to be with yourself, because I think that this is a big problem for a lot of people. You kind of have the awareness and the desire, and everything is there. The discipline is not there.
Mhm.
You're sort of saying, I'd love to do that. I'd love to be, that, but I have no time. I don't know how to. Are you a disciplined person?
Yes, highly. So thank you. See, I knew this is perfect. Yes. As much of an air sign as I am, so much air, I actually have learned, and as a neurodiverse leader, I'm a producer. It's my job to lead lots of people and make sure that everything's falling into place. But I also have ADHD. I'm an HSP. I'm a highly sensitive person. I have to be really, really aware of my internal equilibrium. And so for me, discipline gives me the scaffolding to have a baseline of energy within myself so that as external things go topsy-turvy, I still have that inner equilibrium. That would not be, and I have found it through experience through my 3 line, to not be possible if I don't have that scaffolding. So I have a morning routine. I have some things that I will do every single day, no matter what. Some things I give myself grace on, depending upon situations. But I know that it's actually the mornings where I don't feel like doing it that I need to do it most.
Oh, this is interesting. This is interesting because I was going to ask you for your own. First of all, do you have things like that when you really know that you need to do it? So it's when you wake up and you're in a bad mood or not in that headspace,
Mhm.
and that's the time when I know I'm guilty. I can wake up on a bad food, or even worse, wake up, grab my phone and have a look at something, and just on Facebook something comes up that takes my energy in a bad direction. and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's it. And then I am off that balance. And the morning time is so important. I don't know if it's a non-energy type thing for people with projectors and manifestors and reflectors, where we really need time in the morning to get into our zone of aliveness, I call it. We were watching Stranger Things recently, rewatching, I should say, because we're big fans. And Hopper there in I think first episode of the first season, he is there with a cup of coffee. He just woke up, he's really wrecked, and he's walking in the police station. The secretary wants something. He's like, coffee, morning is for coffee and contemplation. And that's my thing now
Love
in the
that.
morning, because if I don't have that time for me, and I might write things, I might plan things, I might even journal, or sometimes even write articles, but this is my time. If something
Mhm.
puts it out, my problem is that if something does kick me off that, I tend to sort of be a bad girl and just say, okay, well, look, I'll do it later, instead of pushing through. So it's
Yes.
interesting for me to see, because I do know that when we experience most resistance, that is actually gaining momentum. That's when you maybe need to
Correct.
push just a little bit further. It's like when you're on a swing and moving
Yes.
forward and you feel that wind on your cheeks, right? It feels like pressing. And
Yes.
yet, this is when you have to push through just a little bit, because things
Yes.
can get better. So take it from me, who fails at this miserably, that saying to yourself, I'll do it tomorrow, does not work.
That, and even saying, well, I will do it later on today, doesn't work. So here's the thing, and well, doesn't work is even strong. It's not, in the spiritual realm, there's not better, worse, good, bad. It's actually just realizing that we have a choice every single moment, right? And so let's just talk about outcomes then. What's the outcome that you want? I think that's a healthier way to look at it. So let's say it's in the morning and you are feeling like you woke up on the wrong foot. For me, if I wake up and it is already gloomy and still sort of dark outside because it's overcast and raining, that's not a good sign for this sunflower being. And so I know that I will actually be doing extra in my morning routine. I'll be doing more steps rather than less in order to allow myself to get into a good space to go throughout my day. Now, what I could do is say, it's so gloomy, I'm so tired, I'm just going to, sleep some more, or I'm just going to stay in my PJs and I'm just going to work from my PJs that day. And listen, there's no, never feel any external guilt. I'm not guilting you if that is what you choose to do, but I know for myself that if I do that, that my output, my productivity that day will actually not be as high because I have not honored my energy started the day. I haven't started my day with self-generosity. You can think and almost attribute to yourself, oh, I'm being generous with myself because I'm just going to work from my PJs. But I would challenge that actually the opposite is true, that you're saying you're not worth the time and the energy necessary to actually come back home to you. So for me, my scaffolding, the things that I do through the structure that I put into my day is a huge act of self-love, to say that no matter what, no matter the outside elements or the internal elements, that I love myself enough to dedicate that time and those actions to me. It's like a warm hug. It really is. And I can postpone it, but if I postpone it, I'm just postponing. I'm postponing a hug. Like, why would I put that off? So for myself, that's what I've found, is that if I wake up and it's Alexander's no good, like horrible, very bad day, or whatever that beautiful children's book was, then that is actually an opportunity for me to say, how do I love myself even more so that my baseline, my equilibrium isn't based off of external things, it's based off of me, and that I do have agency in my life, and that I do get to choose how I show up today and how I express myself today.
I love this. I absolutely love this. And guys, when you're listening to this, and if you are finding you're working from home and at 2 o'clock, you're still in your nightie or, your PJs, and you're there working away, you don't have to feel bad just because Epiphany has her routine, right? Because I often find myself in a nightie at 2 o'clock during the day saying, oh my God, I haven't changed yet. However, I can be extremely productive. And I probably already wrote like 3 articles and planned something, or, did loads of things. So when I'm in the flow, I just cannot find time, because if I go and change, I'm going to interrupt that flow. That's just, I said that not to contradict to what Epiphany was saying, but as an example of,
It's a both
you
and.
really need to discover what works for you. However, you would want to experiment with this and not just, continue the way you are if you don't see yourself very clearly, like what I mentioned. Now, I know that if I'm in the flow, that flow can't be interrupted. The moment that flow gets interrupted, that task is not going to be finished. And as a projector, I don't sometimes have the energy to come back to it. And not only for that day, but it could be sometimes several days. If I had this big expansion, then I would be, I really need to recharge. So I kind of need to not, I don't want to say I need to do it, such a bad wording, but I want to be in the flow for as long as I can. And so that's the reason why I don't change. Don't hold it against me, but you can, no, not you, of course. I'm just saying, don't hold it against yourself if that's what you are. I think that self-awareness is such key. What is working for you? Where are you at your best most highest potential, I would say. And
Mhm.
I loved hearing your, your routine. In fact, you said a couple of things. So getting yourself ready for the day is one of the routines. And I wanted to ask you, what else do
Yeah.
you do in the morning? What is your part of your routine?
Yes. Oh, I'm just so curious. Do you have a defined throat?
Yes.
Yeah, I felt it. Okay.
Tell me more.
So, uh, I find so one of the things they say in human design is that the manifestor's way is you have this internal nonverbal creative flow, and mansions have it as well. But I would venture to say that I have found that those who have a defined throat, regardless of what their energy type is, has this internal nonverbal creative flow that you it makes perfect sense to me as I listen to you that you could still be in your pajamas, and if you're in your flow, you are still able to create because it's more about the energy of the flow than it is about any sort of external indicators. Now, again, for myself, I'm creating more of a scaffolding because I also recognize my ADHD, and I just know from a behavioral psychology standpoint that that is what allows me to create an on ramp for my brain and an off ramp for my brain. So my situation perhaps is different, but perhaps it's helpful for you if you also recognize that you have that in your executive function, and perhaps you can integrate it into your life. But when I'm working with a client, I like to say this: just pick three things. It does not matter. So I can work with a mom of three, and maybe her three things is I'm just going to change out of my top. It can still be the yoga bottoms, but I'm going to have a top on, brush my hair, mascara. Whatever those three things are, it doesn't actually matter. Those three things could actually be all deeply internal. Like I make my matcha tea in the morning and I read the newspaper. To people still read paper, but I'm going to read for 15 minutes and I'm going to go on a walk. Those are things too. It doesn't have to be anything about external presentation. That's a peace of mind because it allows, again, just like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if your audience is familiar with this TV series, and this gentleman would come in and he had this routine of, I'm going to change my sweater, I'm going to change my shoes, and it helped signify this is a different energy and different things are going to happen because of these external changes. Actors do that as well, where part of their process is being in that, those having that prop that's their characters, or wearing that dress that's their characters, because it helps them from the outside in. So yes, you could have different processes, but I would say pick three things, and whatever those three things are, you can even have an extended list of like, well, my stretch goal is these five things, but just start with three. And if you're into apps, I'm pretty sure it's free. I don't think I ever paid for it. Fabulous is a fabulous app, fabulously named, that I use to that helped me build that habit. And to answer your question for other things that I potentially do in the morning, so I always do 100 jumps. It's what wakes me up. It jogs my body out of sleep mode into awake mode. It also has a ton of other benefits if you look into the research behind it of how it's activating all of your inside organisms that are keeping you going every day. But I always do 100 jumps. I have stretches I do as well. The extent of which I stretch is just dependent upon how long I feel like I need to be in my body to then do things with my brain. But I'll always do that. I almost always listen to music like a soundtrack to my life, but I have a playlist that only has female voices because I don't want to listen to the patriarchy for at least the first 2 hours of the day. So that's just a rule that I have for myself, but maybe that resonates, maybe it doesn't.
There's no judgment, because I think it's very important that we have these things and we're honest with ourselves about the reason why. And I loved that you said that. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to male voices because
Really?
I just love the sound of a nice male singing voice.
There you go.
And
It
that's
brings
it. And all my favorite bands, I think, are all male singers. But that's a different thing. I when I was 3, I fell in love with our Russian D'Artagnan from Three Musketeers movie, and he sang. So that stays with me forever. And that's the
there you
reason, I
go.
think.
There you go. Oh, and I love Michael Bublé. Like there are definitely male singers that I swoon at their vocal cords, just not first thing in the morning, because first thing in the morning, I almost feel like energetically I'm trying to come back to my feminine self, because as a manifestor and perhaps as a projector, there we go. You feel this as well, that we are non-sacral beings. We everyone has all of the design, but we don't have sustained access to that work life force energy into our sacral. But our systems are designed by the 70% of the population that do have access to that. And so for me, my practice in the morning is to help me unlearn the patterns of trying to act like a manifesting generator when that's not my energetic type. It's not how I honor my energy, and it will lead to burnout. And I can tell when I'm not acting from that place of who I really am, because I'm trying to prove my worth by the doing. Again, it always comes back to the being. And so that's what helps me, is if I listen to those female voices, particular tracks that help me actually lean into the beauty and the power of femininity, then it just is a gentle reminder that I don't have to always be in a state of masculine action, if that makes sense. You need both.
Yes.
You need both. And again, one is not better or worse than the other, but you need both. And for me, I have to intentionally focus on one more than the other because of the systems that I grew up in, idolizing one over the other, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And in fact, it's still, I'm in awe here with the awareness that you have of these energies in yourself and your needs. And I think that this is something that, for me, this is something that draws me in. The awareness of what works for you. What are your patterns? How do you bring your energy to the highest potential of, in my case, how do I stay in that flow and, access that flow? Before I let you go today, I do want to ask you, why human design for you specifically? And I know that you're very much into the quantum human design. What,
Mm-hmm.
of all the other modalities, of all the other things?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been on the self-awareness, development, actualization journey for a long, long time. And my very first foray into it as modalities go was taking the Myers-Briggs test umpteen years ago. And it was nice. It was such a nice feeling to feel seen, to recognize that there are many types of people, and so that my type is not wrong or bad or black sheep or anything like that. It is. And so it allowed me then to free myself, start the process of freeing myself, of being myself. But that is certainly easier said than done. And that was maybe 15 years ago. And so the more that I've gone down that rabbit hole of exploring and trying all of the modalities and trial and feedback, for me, human design was something that when it was first brought to my awareness, I was pretty deep in the waters of the Enneagram, if you're familiar.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I saw it. I saw my body graph, my chart, and I felt that resonance, but I also felt that energetic levels, checking my inner levels of, I don't have the energy to go down that path yet, but I will. I know that I will. And so I gave myself the gift of time. I'm emotional authority. So I gave myself the gift of time even before having that vocabulary of just allowing myself to know that it'll come in when it's supposed to. And then it did. It came back in. I always invest in a coach who is levels ahead of me and a mastermind. So I'm running alongside women. And then, of course, investing what I'm learning from those two levels into my clients will all rise together. I say all that to say that my mystical sales coach brought human design back into my awareness. And when I decided to dive back in, I went both feet in. It was a very beautiful moment because I dabbled in astrology, but what I loved about human design was this beautiful kaleidoscope synthesis of multiple ancient systems come together. And to me, it was so beautiful because I grew up in a worldview where it was like this or nothing, this or bust. And what I loved about human design was it was saying, yes, and it was like in improv, that's how you keep everything going, is you say yes, and that is what I felt from human design was yes, and yes, there is deep eternal, like outside of time truths in this, in this, in this, in this, and in you. Guess what? Also in you. And so let's look at this beautiful map of who you are. And the reason I dove into quantum human design specifically after being in traditional human design for a time was because I saw a lot of people lamenting their design in the traditional human design space, feeling really sad. Well, I don't have this, I don't have that, or I can't believe I'm, LRRL and all these things. And I enjoy quantum human design because it is human design, but it is written in intentionally high vibrational vocabulary so that as you are focusing on what your gate activations are, for instance, you are looking at it, it's not the gate of shock, like it's, the gate of truth. There's these ways of looking at your design as a gift. And when you focus on the highest expression of those gifts that you do possess, and you recognize that just like the genetic code, we have the entire spectrum of the genetic code within us. It's just what's activated. So when you look at what's defined, notice that even if you quote unquote don't have a sacral, yes, you do. Everyone has a sacral. Everyone has a sacral. Everyone can manifest. Everyone can do all the things. You have access to your entire chart, because you have access to the entire spectrum of human existence, right? It's how you choose to show up within it. And then it's recognizing where you are more defined, where you have more energy there consistently, because that gives you clues as to who you are here to be. And so I just loved quantum human design for that, and allowed me to release that I was no longer working with my clients in this space of, well, here's what worked for me. So as the quote unquote guru, here's my way, here's my formula, here's my system. It's no. Here's what works for you based off of your design and honoring you. And so the two main things, I think self-love is a big piece of quantum human design, allowing you to love yourself, to actually believe that you were here for a purpose, that you chose to be born when you were born, where you were born, with who you were, the family you were born into, for a reason, that you're here to learn a life curriculum, and that you're here to move towards that. And so let's be playful, let's enjoy life, and let's be playful and figure that out together. And so to me, if anyone here in this audience is saying, I feel that I'm here for a purpose, but I don't always know what that is, or I really want to be an authority figure in my space, and or anywhere in between, that in order to be an authority in your field, let's look at becoming an authority of yourself. And then from that place, there is no toiling and trying and forcing divine timing to become an authority in your field. You will become an authority in your field by nature of being that authority of yourself. That is when true magnetism and the magic, as we say, happens.
That is beautiful. It really, really is beautiful. Epiphany, where can people in our audience, who I'm sure now totally fell in love with your voice, fell in love with your personality, with all the things that you shared, where can I find you? And I know that you have a little gift for them as well.
Yes, I do. Okay, yes. So you can find me. I am perhaps most active visually on the good old Gram. And I believe the links will be in the show notes, but it is at Epiphany James. But my website is beontherise.com. And I do have an ebook, which is Unlock Self-Love through Quantum Human Design. So you can run your type on my website if you do not know already what your type is, and then dive into that book. Or you could be very three about it and actually just download the book and read through it and feel what resonates with you, because here's what I know. You know what resonates with you, and that could be your indicator for what your type is, even if you haven't taken the quote unquote, like, it's not even a test, it's just putting in your birth info. But do that, have fun with it. It's multimedia. There's the PDF version, but then there's also a secret link with a secret password that has some voice notes from me about what your first step is on your pathway to radical self-love, because I believe that is how we change the world, is by you loving yourself enough to express who you really are, and by nature of being you, activating that in others around you.
That is so beautiful. Epiphany, thank you so much for being my wonderful guest today. Guys, Epiphany James, and I will see you in the next episode of Visibility by Design.